I mean, come on. Come on. Could that sound any closer to the original theme? I just think that is so brilliant. Hi, this is Callum from Spitfire Audio, and I'm really excited to be here today to break down my demo of the Doctor Who theme tune using only BBC Radiophonic Workshop and BBC Symphony Orchestra. So let's have a listen. I wanted this demo to be a blend of Ron Grainer and Delia Derbyshire's original version from 1963 and Murray Gold's arrangement from 2005, which was the first one that I ever heard. So let's start by breaking down the bass sound. So in the original theme, the bass line was made by blending two different sounds together. The first was the sound of a single plucked string recorded onto tape, and that sound was then emphasized on the beat by another bass sound, a lower bass sound, and a longer bass sound, which was a sine wave from a test tone oscillator. So I've done a similar approach in my demo, but I've gone a bit further and I've split up the bass line between 4 or 5 different sounds. So the first one is Dalek Control Room bass, and this is one of the archive sounds, and it sounds like this. So you'll notice the rhythm of that original sample is really interesting. It's got quite a lot of complex rhythm baked into the sample. And what I noticed is if I kept the note quite short, I only heard the first 2 notes of the iconic bass line, and then this third almost ghost note, which was the delay of the lower octave. And it sounded like this. So that was quite cool. So that's why I've chopped it up like this and bounced it to audio. You'll notice I've got the sound actually on 3 different tracks, one for each note. And this is because in the plugin, obviously different pitches have different speeds. So to make sure that they all maintain the same rhythm, what I needed to do was copy them to different tracks and time stretch them. There's a really easy way to do this in Logic by holding Alt and then dragging the bottom right of the audio file, and it time stretches your sample. It's magic. I didn't know Logic could do this for a long time, so I was living in the dark, and once I learnt that trick, it was a game changer. So you'll notice only the first 2 notes of the recognisable rhythm are being played by that Dalek Control Room sound. So there is a guitar pluck sound layered in. There's actually an octave going on, so I've got guitar plucks high and guitar plucks low. Initially, it's only playing the 3rd note of the recognisable theme, so then coupled with the control room bass gives that recognisable rhythm. So when you listen to this guitar plucks sound on its own, it does sound quite strange, because if you listen here, we're only playing notes 2 and 4 of the rhythm. I felt like having this call and response thing going on between the 2 bass sounds gave it a lot more energy and gave the beginning of the piece a lot more momentum, as if it just felt like it kept pushing forwards. So the 3rd part of the bass is emulating those longer notes from the original that were created using the test tone oscillator, but I used guitar picks and a vocoder. So this 3rd bass sound is emulating the longer notes that were made using a test tone oscillator in the original theme, but I've got guitar plucks and a vocoder going on. I just think that sounds really rich and deep, and I love it. So we've got guitar plucks. This is what they sound like on their own. And then this is what the vocoder sounds like on its own. So you'll notice there's a glide happening from the E to the G. I think that glide in the bass is so integral to the theme. I think, in my opinion, any adaptation of the Doctor Who theme has to have some sort of gliding or swooping, whether it's in the bass line or whether it's in the main melody. I think it really has to be there. I think this is because I remember those episodes that I used to watch in 2005, and when I heard the theme for the first time, the entire theme evokes a sense of energy and hope and mystery, but it also has this really eerie, haunting quality. And I really, really believe that those glides play a major role in creating that effect. So the fourth bass sound I have here is called 0G bass, which is a preset in the plugin, and that sounds like this. So we have a different sound in each bay here. We have the skeleton guitar plucks in the first bay. Sound really strange, and they don't really have much bass, those notes. I think this is a really cool preset because the bass is really carried by the other bass sound, which is the sine bass, and it's really deep and rich. So this is a really cool preset because these sounds are quite different, and this sine bass sound really occupies those bass frequencies for the whole track, really. And you'll see up here in the other bass sounds I've taken out a lot of those bass frequencies using EQ to leave room for this 0G bass sound. So let's move on to the percussion in the track. So I haven't got much percussion because I felt like the other instruments were doing enough for the rhythm, that it didn't really need a lot going on in terms of drums or other sound effects to be percussive, but I did add a couple, and this one is called Maida Vale Kit. So the members of the BBC Radiophonic Workshop went back to Maida Vale and recorded so many new sounds just for this plugin, and this kit is a fantastic way of hearing them all in one place. If we go through the Bay sound list, we can hear the individual sounds on their own, but there's a really cool collection of stuff. There's a BBC sign hit, there are sounds of CD rack fingers, chair hits, door hits, coffee jar lid, computer keys pressed, all sorts of weird stuff, and really cool ways of recording found sound in a musical context. So I would advise playing the Maida Vale kit because it has a bunch of these sounds all together. Every note is different, and it's really, really fun experimenting and seeing what you can come up with. What I came up with was these 4 notes here. So as you can hear, different round robins create different inflections of sound each time those notes are played. It creates a lot of variation. So the next sound we have in the percussion section is called Book Activation. It's another archive sound, and it sounds like this. So there's a lot going on there. It's a really strange collection of sounds. And what I noticed was when I played just the start of one of those notes, this was a real happy accident. It just happened to be in time with my track. So I just cut the first part of that note and I repeated it so that it gives a really nice attack to every bar. And then when coupled with the Maida Vale kit, it sounds like this. So the other percussion sound we've got going on before we dive into BBC Symphony Orchestra completely is this snare sound. So the snare is really accenting those first two notes of the rhythm. Once again, I found that splitting up the rhythm between different instruments and even different percussive instruments was a lot more interesting than just having everything playing the same notes. So the percussion altogether sounds like this. I think it sounds really cool. It almost sounds like a marching band, and it just feels like it's creating this momentum and it keeps pushing the piece forwards. So I didn't really want to add any more percussion than that. I think there's just enough to keep the rhythm without it becoming overbearing. So for the BBC Symphony Orchestra, let's dive into this a bit. So we have basses, cellos and violas playing along with the bass notes right at the beginning of the piece. And then we also have some horns and trombones playing longer notes. I think using strings was perfect for this, and this is something I absolutely love about Murray Gold's theme from 2005, because it adds a real human touch to the sound. And here's what the strings in the beginning sound like all together. There are really crucial elements to the Doctor Who theme if you're going to recreate it, the most crucial being the bass line and the swooping lead melody, but I find there are these pockets of time around the main theme that you have a lot of creative freedom to add your own counter melodies and chords, so I added these chords, which they sound a little bit strange when played on their own. And this theme is then called back to later on by the horns and the contrabass. I absolutely love hearing that being played by the horns, having already heard it being played by the strings earlier on in the piece. The only processing that I added to the BBC Symphony Orchestra tracks was a tiny, tiny bit of a bass boost on the EQ, which coupled with the 0G bass just gives the whole track a bit more oomph in the bass, and it really makes the basses and the cellos cut through a bit more. And then I've got this secret sauce, which is Air Studio's Reverb Essentials. I absolutely cannot use any strings anymore without using this plugin. I think it's so genuinely incredible. It glues everything together, but it also pushes it back slightly, and it really just makes it feel like all the strings were recorded in the same room. Now let's talk about what I'm really excited to show you, which is the lead melody. So Delia Derbyshire's original melody was built, once again, from pure sine waves using test tone oscillators. So I've tried to emulate that in the best way that I can, which wasn't too hard actually, but I'll show you what it sounds like on its own. I mean, come on. Come on. Could that sound any closer to the original theme? I just think that is so, so brilliant. Oh, really, really cool. So let's open up this preset and see what's happening. So we have made it into a preset. It's called Do-E-Oo, very appropriately. And so let's see what's happening. So in one of the sound bays, we've got this sound called Warps Our Planet. And this is the sound that's really trying to emulate that test tone oscillator, which in that original theme was run through a bunch of delays. So we can do this really easily in the plugin. If we go to that bay's effects and then we can dial in the aux effect. So here I've got 64% of the delay 1 sound dialed in. And then the other bay, we have the sound Warp's Cosmic Rays, which sounds like this. So the reason I have this sound as well is because I was listening to the main theme a couple of weeks back, probably over 100 times to try and create this preset. And that is just about what I heard. Is there was a harsher synth sound that didn't have any glide, but it did have delay, but it felt like it had its own delay. This is really the beauty of Solar though, is that you can process and mix two completely different sounds in a completely different way. And then you can apply effects to the output, so it's affecting both of the sounds. And you can do it all within the Solar plugin. I mean, there's so much you can do in this plugin. And I haven't even got any channel effects here. It's all within this plugin. So what else have we got going on under the main synth? There are these 4 tracks. These are parts of the theme that play in parallel to the main synth, but are either in different octaves or different sounds. Again, that sounds quite strange on its own, but let's break it down. So what have we got here? We've got a preset called Fever Dream. So yeah, it's quite a noisy sound, and I thought it was perfect for this because I wanted a harsher sound to accompany the main synth and just give it a bit more oomph. In addition to the synths, we have some violins and horns that are accompanying the synth lead theme, which was a big feature of Murray Gold's 2005 version. Under this, staccato violas and violins are trading short phrases in a sort of call and response pattern. You know, listening to that on its own, it almost sounds like Pirates of the Caribbean. It sounds quite swashbuckly, and I've never noticed that before, but that is really cool. I think that really adds some drama under the main theme. I think this means there are a lot of other counter melodies going on while the main theme is playing, which keeps things really interesting. At this point in the track, there is another bass sound called Keller War, one of our presets, which once again is very, very inspired by Murray Gold's 2005 version. And it has this bouncy sort of bass sound accompanying the theme. And as soon as I opened up this preset, I thought, that's it. It's just loud enough in the mix that you know there's something different happening in the bass, but it's not too loud that it distracts from the main theme. This library is packed with amazingly bizarre effects that you really don't have to manipulate too much to make them sound great, but if you do, you have a lot of fun. This is quite a complex and evolving sample that was featured in Tom Baker's episode called The Pyramids of Mars. This sound is played as the Doctor trapped Sutek into the time vortex, so it was quite perfect to be at the start of this track to introduce it. And then the next sound effects happen right at the end of the piece to give it a bit of an outro and to close it off. This is what these 5 sounds here sound like. Yeah, so quite a crash bang wallop of sounds going on there. So the first one is called Ghost in the Cupboard. Let's have a look at this one. This is a really cool feature of Solar. You have this oscillate mixer toggle on. This is a really, really cool effect where the plugin can move between the 2 sound bays at a set rate. It just means the sound keeps changing over time and it really keeps it evolving. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I really hope this has been a helpful insight into what this library can do. Be sure to check out other videos on our YouTube channel for more information about BBC Radiophonic Workshop and BBC Symphony Orchestra. So, to finish, let's have one last listen to the track in full.